And I'm really pleased to introduce Mark Bowman as our speaker. And I know Mark from several summers working on his banding crew, his bird banding crew at Kent Park. And it was just so fun to be involved in that and see the birds up close. And in addition to his bird banding work, Mr. Bowman worked as a hospital laboratory scientist and an educator. And he's presented several times for our club, most recently on passerine migration or passerine molt and American kestrels. So tonight he's going to be talking about a bird species that is just beloved by so many people, the purple martin. So I'll turn it over to Mark.
Okay, so welcome. I have many friends here. I have many kestrel friends and many banding friends and purple martin friends. So I'm very excited. And likewise in the Zoom audience, I've not had this big an audience before in this venue. Now I never present to the Iowa City Bird Club without honoring three very special people. Karen Dispro. Why can't I think of Rick's last name?
Rick Hollis.
Thank you. Karen Dispro. I'm getting old. We all are. Karen Dispro, Rick Hollis, and Brad Friedhoff. So Karen Dispro and Rick Hollis for many years ran the Intro to Birding course. And that's what absolutely sparked my interest in birding. And Brad Friedhoff, who long ago was the exuberant naturalist for Johnson County Conservation, he's now the director of the program, pointed out that class to me. And, you know, when I was out in Kent Park and he had other duties, he would take time and teach me many things. So I would never cease to honor these people. But it was life-changing for me. And I don't know a better way to say it. So I'm going to steal from the evangelicals. And I'm going to say I was born again when I discovered birds. It really was a big deal. And then, so I can't remember your last name, Jim. Yes.
Walters.
Yes. And then we, in fact, have an extremely honorable and esteemed person in the audience tonight, Jim Walters, who is the foster father of thousands upon thousands of birds, kestrels, bluebirds, ducks, tree swallows. He's been at it for many, many years with through the Johnson County Songbird Project, and I would always want to honor him. Okay, purple martin, a very large high-flying swallow. Please hold questions and comments until the end of the presentation. Then I can easily return to a slide of interest. Notice as we go through, there'll be slides with a question mark on them, and I'll try to get through things quickly, and then we can go back to those particular slides and I can pose thought questions to you that I think you would enjoy. Yeah, just if you would, just, you don't need to absorb everything said. If you could treat it almost like a nature program or a NOVA program. Obviously, I don't have the high expertise that those people do or the high production values, but I can bring you a lot of information fast. And if you absorb 20% of it, it'll be wonderful. So I'm going to start, I'm going to talk about the family to which purple martins belong. And then I'm going to talk about their cousins, the genus to which they belong. And then I'm going to talk about their very close siblings, the subspecies of the purple martins. So we're starting with the family, swallows, and the family is called Hirundinidae. And Hirundinidae is just a Latin word that literally says swallows. It's the plural form of the Latin word for swallow. So there are 21 genera with 90 species. They arose in Africa, and in fact, today, 47 of the 90 species are African species. Many are quite colorful, like this Hirundo abyssinica here in the slide. They're insectivorous and they forage on the wing. They dispersed from Africa and evolved into species that became established on all other continents except Antarctica. Now, swallows evolved a very distinct body form they really look quite different from most passerines. I don't know other passerines that look so very different as swallows do from the others. They have elongated eyes, and each of their eyes has two fovea. So that's like a raptor in terms of two fovea. They have short, wide bills, and the bills really are unusual looking. The front end curls down strangely, and the bill's very wide, and at the outer edges, it just kind of blends into the face. So the bill looks very small until they open their mouth. And in fact, they have a big mouth. So in hand, they look quite different from most passerines. Eyes appear to bulge, unusual beak shape. They have very enhanced flight efficiency. They're slender overall, they have long pointed wings, and they have highly reduced legs and feet. Very, very small bones in the feet and legs, and very poor muscles in the legs and feet. And this, of course, reduces their weight. They are the most efficient flyers among the passerines. Their metabolic rate in flight is about 60% lower than other passerines. So that's quite stunning. Thus, they can forage for longer periods without even landing. They feed their young in flight. They drink in flight. And now I'm going to settle in on the martens. But before I do, I need to tell you that in the United States, if you use the term marten in reference to a bird, you're saying the genus Progne, to which the purple marten belongs. But it's not that way in Britain. So the British use the term differently, the English. Marten to them refers to a square-tailed swallow, while swallow refers to a fork-tailed swallow. So consequently, riparia, which some of you birders are familiar with, is a bank swallow to us, but to the British, it's a river marten. And now to the genus, Progne, the martens. 9 species of large New World swallows, including the purple marten, named for a mythological Athenian princess whom the gods turned into a swallow. The genus arose in the Andes Mountains, and they're all quite similar in morphology, behavior, and ecology. So here are 7 examples of the species, and oh, that is frustrating. So I want to show the top of the screen. Hold on one second. Okay, I don't know how, I can't quite get to the top of the screen. Look up at the United States. If you can see my cursor, then I'm pointing to the purple marten, right, in the United States. But here are some of the others, just examples of the others. There's something called a Sinaloa marten in Western Mexico. There's a Cuban marten. There's a Caribbean marten. There's a Galapagos marten. There's a Peruvian marten that lives along the coast of Peru. And there's what's called a southern marten. I don't know why they don't call it Argentinian marten that breeds in Argentina. Now, these 4 at the top all winter in Amazonia. So, and as we've already said, the martens came from the Andes, so they originated in the mountains, right, just west of Amazonia, and they are largely a tropical species, if you will. That's their kind of their set piece. And so they winter in Amazonia, the 4 at the top. Likewise, the Argentinian marten winters, if you will, in Amazonia. And better to say Amazonia is the non-breeding site, the residing site for non-breeding. So one of the consequences of this is it takes some work to study purple martens in Amazonia because there's so many other birds there that look very similar. And if you do want to tell the difference between them, you must see the underside to tell them apart. So here's the Sinaloa marten again, and you can see it has a huge amount of white on the underside. The Cuban marten, little white down toward the vent, right? Caribbean marten, considerably more. And here's the only other one that would be in Amazonia, and it's going to be hard to see. And this, in fact, is the southern marten, right? The one down in Argentina. But they're all different from the purple marten, who has the solid, deep blue purple on the underside. And I could not find an underside photo. None of these species are well studied. The purple marten is extensively studied by contrast, and I couldn't even find an underside photo of the Galapagos marten. Now, I'm going to go back. So the Galapagos martin. Sorry, why do I not see my cursor? That doesn't. Oh, because my cursor is white. The Galapagos martin and the Peruvian martin are non-migratory. So they, and I'll have a question about that for you toward the end. So those are the cousins. And now we'll talk somewhat specifically about a specific cousin, the purple martin, Progne subus. It's the largest of the Progne species. It's the largest New World swallow, and it might be the largest swallow in the world. It's we don't have complete data on many other species. Purple martins also migrate the furthest of the martins. Subus, the name subus suggests aggressive territorial behavior. And often in this, I'll need space for my writing on my slides. And so I'll use the banding code for the purple martin. PUMA, or PUMA, is an abbreviation for purple martin. So here is the range of the purple martin based on eBird data. And I'll be coming back to this slide a couple times more later in the presentation. Right now, I would just like you to notice just a few things about it. First, look at the high density of the purple martins in South Dixie, if you will, in the Gulf states, right? So if you want to see huge amounts of them, that would be the place to go. And then second, look at the difference between Missouri and Iowa. So if you want to see a lot of purple martins, other than going to where we provide cavities for them, right? Other than going to one of our sites, if you want to see them in the wild, so to speak, you would do much better in Missouri than Iowa. And there's a simple reason for that. Martins like high temperature. They eat bugs in the air, and insects do not fly when the temperature is cold, right? So they're happier in Missouri than in Iowa. And as you can see in the wintertime, they're very happy in the heart of the Amazonian rainforest. Now, there are 3 purple martin subspecies. And so almost everything that I will say today will refer to the eastern species. Yes, Progne subus subus. It's called the nominate species, and that just means that they repeat the species name for the subspecies, and they do that because it was the first subspecies well studied, right? So they give it that, they call it the defining species. As you can see, they can be all over the eastern United States and up into Canada. And let's look at these other 2 for a minute. Let's look at arboricola, the tree-loving, represented here in green. So you see that it extends down into Mexico, and it's prevalent in Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, Utah, and then along the Pacific coast, right? Northern California up through Oregon, and then in the Puget Sound as well. Now, these subspecies are highly similar. They look very, very similar to one another. Their size and their weight is very similar to one another, but they're very different in their nesting habits. So that's what I'll emphasize here. So I mentioned the second western species, arboricola, and now I'll mention Progne subus Hesperia, and Hesperia stands for western. And you see that Hesperia is down here in a very dry region, Baja California, right? Northwestern Mexico, up into southeastern Arizona. And so let's talk about where they nest. So over time, our eastern version has become almost completely dependent upon human provided cavities to nest, right? And it'd be very difficult for them otherwise, because there's very high competition for empty woodpecker holes, right? In the east, there's not a lot of forests, and there's a good amount of forests, but dead trees are rapidly removed. That's a better way to say it. So they're just not going to find snags, and they are a very gregarious species, and they flock. So they end up finding human homes, if you will, because they come in large numbers there together. Now, arboricola, the western one, is quite different. They, in fact, nest primarily in tree snags. They will also use the underside of bridges, and they will use certain utility structures. And then up in the Pacific Northwest, some people have started providing them artificial cavities as well. And then Hesperia nests only in saguaro cacti, inside saguaro cacti. So pretty interesting. Approximate size and weight. Purple martins are about 8 inches beak to tail, 16-inch wingspan, and they weigh about 53 grams on average. They're often described as robin size, but they're not. Size to me means substance. It means mass, which of course directly relates to strength. And robins outweigh purple martins substantially. So, but when you see them in the sky, you would think they were the same because they have such long wings. And that is true for swallows in general. When I banded barn swallows, I was very surprised to discover they're the size of goldfinches. And because they have big wings and a big tail, you know, until I had one in my hands, I had no idea just how tiny they are. Yep. Now, purple martins have something called delayed plumage maturation, a very common pattern amongst sexually dimorphic passerines. It occurs when birds do not attain their adult plumage until late in their second calendar year of life. So they they leave the nest in juvenile plumage, and then they actually make it down to the Amazon, or just about down to the Amazon, before they put on a new set of feathers, and that's called a formative plumage. And that puts them in what would be considered a subadult or a second-year state. And let's see, here in the crowd, I have at least 3 or 4 people that have banded with me, so they're familiar with us using this term second year and after second year. The second year is a not quite adult bird, a subadult, and the after second year, the fully adult bird. So they'll have to make wait a whole nother year, right? And another trip to the Amazon before they get that final adult plumage, also called the definitive plumage. So in most species with delayed plumage maturation, males compete very poorly for mates. So in their first year back, they're just not they're gonna get out competed for territory and for mates by the olders. So now let's compare the various ages and sexes, starting with the adult male. So the adult male, as you know already, is spectacular, to say the least. All body feathers and many wing and tail coverts are iridescent, deep blue to purple, except for black lowers. And the angle of light and viewing affects apparent color. And many of you already know that's very true for all birds that are blue. Due to the unique nature of the blue color, due to occurring from diffraction within the feathers themselves. And so here are 2 adult purple martins, and in fact, they're the exact same color, but either angle of viewing or angle of light falling on them makes them appear quite different. And here then is what we've just been talking about, the second year male who's not going to find a mate. And they're almost psychotic at the nest. I mean, they run around they cause trouble. They'll attack nestlings, they'll pick fights. And this interests me because in human beings, the most dangerous humans are between the age of about 15 and 25 years of age, right? And people are much less so. That's a sociological fact. So it is with these. But anyway, their appearance is pretty unique and pretty much fun to spot if you get the chance. Up top, they're quite shiny, just like the adult males, you know, the upper parts. There will be a few brown feathers mixed in. And the underside, you're going to see in a second, is very similar to the adult female, being white feathers with brown centers mixed in, right? Brownish centers mixed in, except that And if it had only those things, you could not tell it from the adult female. But the way that you can tell is somewhere between the chin and the vent, there's going to be an iridescent feather or 2. And usually there'll be multiple ones, right? And that's what allows you to spot the subadult second year male. And now we're looking at the, I must have skipped a, hold on, let's go back. Yeah. Okay. So now the adult female. Upper part body feathers, a mixture of iridescent blue to purple and gray colored feathers. Forehead and underparts grayish to whitish. And then the undertail coverts, represented here, have these distinct dusky centers, and that's going to be the key trait that's going to separate it from the subadult female. And we'll look at that now. So here then, look first here at this ready trait to separate the young female from the older female. The young female does not have these big dark centers, but just will show kind of brownish stripes in there, in that location. But then you can see that the young female is paler overall on the underside. Yes, much whiter overall on the underside. And then the fledgling. So the fledgling is a dull brownish gray upper parts. Now it can have some iridescent feathers mixed in, but they're not necessarily easy to see from the distance at which you'd be seeing them. Collar quite similar to the adult female. And abdomen and undertail coverts just like the subadult female. And then if they happen to open their mouth, if you happen to see them with their mouth open, the young have a very bright yellow mouth, and the elders have a horn-colored lining up to the mouth. Flight. Purple martin flight, and if you've been around the colonies, you've seen this a great deal, combines bursts of rapid flapping with agile gliding. Very beautiful to observe. And to me, I'm crazy about the common nighthawk, and it's a very similar flight pattern to the common nighthawk if you've been watching them. They can reach 40 miles an hour in pursuit of prey. And this is very important. So if you walk away from here and you don't remember anything else, remember they can reach 40 miles an hour in pursuit of prey. Because someday you might have to cross a dangerous bridge and somebody might be asking you, what is the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow? And now you have it, right? Keep at it. Save you from death. That's a strange joke, but somebody got it. So, okay. Purple martins will sometimes tuck their wings and stoop, just like a peregrine falcon, just close up their wings and do a sharp dive. And that's when they need to descend to their colony. Their colonies could be dead in the middle of New York City if there's enough clearance above, right, to let them kind of glide down to get at the colony. So that's a difficulty for them. And that's where their colonies are most successful. And I bet most people in here know that Jim has a colony right in Coralville, right in a parking lot in Coralville, and one right behind a restaurant in Coralville as examples. So it doesn't, to be in a city is fine. Okay. Diet is various flying arthropods, straight across all the types of insects pretty much that fly, winged ants, various kinds of bugs, various kinds of flies, and beetles, moths and butterflies, dragons and damselflies, and ballooning spiders in addition. There's one type of fly, the most dangerous family of flies, the Culicidae, the mosquitoes, largely absent from their diet. And for a very straightforward reason, mosquitoes fly close to the ground. The mosquitoes actually do not tolerate wind well. And consequent to that, they're most active at dawn and dusk when the wind tends to be lowest, right? And then, of course, they're very active at night. But martins are foraging during the day, right? And they're foraging, as we're going to find out, very high in the sky. So when they're studied, they were thought to eat a lot of mosquitoes until scientific studies were done. And you can't find them in the gut, and you can't find them in the DNA of their feces. Foraging. As with swifts and as with nightjars, swallows approach flying arthropods with mouths agape. When digital altimeters were attached to Puma, and I think those of us that have high interest in birds know well that one of the most exciting areas of research is attaching tiny electronic devices to birds, right? So they've done this already with altimeters, and they found that they typically forage above 50 meters high, average maximum height over 800 meters, minimal height of one individual was 6 meters. So you almost can't watch them foraging. You watch them when they're coming down or late in the day when they choose to forage lower. Otherwise, they're pretty much too high. They're observed feeding near dusk, close to the ground level. And when flying insects are lacking, they will try to glean arthropods off of leaves or skim them from a water surface. And I'm very pleased with the pace we're holding. So now we're going to walk through the life of an Eastern Purple Martin. And it begins as a white 4-gram egg within a clutch of 4 to 6 eggs, laying on a bed of fresh leaves that the parents have provided. And typically there'll be dry bedding under those leaves, and that dry bedding was likely provided by the landlord or landlady or host. The female parent begins brooding when the second to last egg is laid. Male will sometimes brood when the female's out, and the male will also guard the nest box from the outside. And they do leave eggs unattended when they're out foraging for themselves. Nestling stage. Hatches blind and featherless after 15 to 18 days of incubation. And so I hope you can sense I'm pointing out the things that excited me in studying to learn about them, to present. They are remarkable in multiple ways. And this is yet another, this 15 to 18 days of incubation. So the secret to the overwhelming success of the passerines to which this bird belongs is quick maturation, right? Quick maturation within the egg and quick maturation of the feathers and the wing feathers to get the hell out of the nest, because a bird is in great danger as an egg, right, in a nest, but it's in greater danger when the egg hatches and it begins calling out for food, and the parent can't stay there to protect it because it has to go find food, right? So among passerines, let me restate that. The typical passerine is like 12 to 15 days in the egg, and then only 12 to 15 days in the nest. And then the parents want them out because their chance to survive is enhanced once they can get on the ground and fly 20 feet or so, right? Or fly 30 feet and start working to get stronger and fly further. Well, not so with these. These are cavity nesters, and they take advantage of that fact in their development. So they spend 15 to 18 days in the egg. That's a long time, allowing for a lot of development. The parents assist hatching and dispose of eggshells. Begging is stimulated by sound or touch. The chick weakly lifts head and faintly calls. Feeding begins on day 1. Feeding frequency is from 6 to 12 visits per hour. Feeding is more frequent early on. I think it's that way with humans, is it not? And it's that way with kittens, is it not? Yeah. So very much like humans. And then look at this. Parents eat fecal sacs until day 8. Now that's different from, well, I can't speak for you, but in my family, that's in the curve. After 8 days, they carry the fecal sacs away. Feather development. Many pin feathers have emerged by day 10. And by day 12, downy body coverts protect the skin. So here's 10 days, 11 days, 12 days. These photographs are provided by the Purple Mountain Conservation Agency. And Nathan, these are digital ones, photographs, and Nathan Kozad loaned his set to me. Now, this has great importance, as we'll mention later, in terms of tending them, because they're very subject to biting gnat attacks until they get their feathers. So we'll mention that again later. And they're much safer after they're 12 days old. All feathers are present by day 20, and boy, they just start looking so pretty at that time, and they're very passive. So we tend them, twice a week. And they're just used to us, peeking in. They don't like to be handled, right? But they don't mind you looking at them, and they don't really freak out, even if you do if you need to handle them. So they're just so beautiful. I grew up on 25 acres from the time I was 8 until I was 18, but I didn't see birds grow up in the nest, and almost everyone does, right, during their childhood. It's such a thrilling thing. I really didn't see it until I was like 50 years old. No, 60 some years old. And at Debbie Bryant's, I was able to watch Phoebe's grow in her shed and robins grow in her brush pile. Really spectacular. But now we see it in spades, right? We get to watch nestlings mature 150 across the season, so to speak, and it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. And these are beautiful, beautiful birds, and they're just more beautiful every day as they mature. So their wing feathers and tail feathers continue to lengthen until day 28. Interestingly, by 17 to 20 days post-hatching, they can weigh 60 grams, and this is with like 53-gram parents. So that's quite remarkable. They outweigh the parents for a few days, and they'll lose some of this weight with further nesting development. And I'll pose that as a thought question to you in the end. They fledge asynchronously. They don't all leave the nest on the same day, typically. So the nesting period is reported as 27 to 36 days. Average fledging time is 28 or 29 days. And just to give an example, 2 or 3 nestlings might fledge as the parents depart for the morning, say on the 28th day after hatching, and then the remaining ones go on the 29th. And between the 28th and the 29th, the parents would have first led those other nestlings, right, away from the colony and then brought them back to the nest. And then they would all leave at that point in time. Fledglings may return to the nest for a night or two. And then this is absolutely marvelous, and I'll be posing this to you as a thought question. The day they leave the nest, they can achieve 5 minutes of sustained flight. Now, I've never heard of that with a passerine at all. And in fact, I'm just going to confess that baby grackles are cute as the dickens. And when they're on the ground and I know their parents are there tending them, I'll still catch them and look at them and take a picture and then set them loose again. I mean, they can fly 20 feet or something, but you know, I just come up behind them and drop a hat over them and then look at them. But fly 5 minutes, sustained flight? Kestrel can't do that. It can't do that when it leaves the nest. This is amazing. This is really a remarkable trait of these very special birds. And then here's another one, and I'll pose it to you too. And there's I know an answer. I think I know an answer to this one, but I may get answers from you that are better than mine. There's brood mixing during fledging. So parents show no ability to recognize their own young and cannot distinguish them from other juveniles of the same age. They only recognize young that are vastly different in age from their own. So when several broods of similar age simultaneously return to nests in the evening, for instance, parents seem to compete to lead any juvenile they encounter back to their nest. And if they succeed, they'll carry on taking care of that juvenile until it gains independence. As a result, juveniles from different broods often mix, and about 25% of broods in assembly areas contain a juvenile from another brood. Parents feed adopted young as their own. Parents lead the initial dispersal of fledglings. Purple martins are quite cooperative within their artificial colonies, with the exception of those subadult second-year males, which often attack fledglings. Consequently, parents tend to lead fledglings well away from the colony. They choose a distant assembly area with good perches and settle in for a few days. And the fledglings quickly gain skills. So the first 2 days, the fledglings just perch together in the assembly area. The parents go out and forage, come back, perch near them and feed them, right? So it'd be just as though they're in the nest, but the parents have brought them to a new location. Day 3. Parents hover above and drop food to them. Now, you know nestlings are competitive for food, right? So they're going to each try to hustle and get that food, and they'll end up catching it in the air, right, to get the best chance at it. And then day 4, the young must fly to the parent to receive food in flight. That's remarkable. That's remarkable. They're well along when they fledge. Soon thereafter, young join their parents during foraging, capturing some of their own food and receiving supplemental food from parents. It's thought that fledglings become independent after 10 days. And in that case, they would still be considered a juvenile because they're in juvenile plumage, but since they're independent of their parents, they're no longer a fledgling. After separations from the family, juveniles may still return to their colony of origin or to another colony to roost. independent life. It's hard to track them after a certain point. I'm sure it took a tremendous amount of work to find that earlier information. So there's relatively little information. There's a lack of family associations. They're thought to travel widely, and they pretty soon join mixed-age flocks in late summer, and especially as migration time approaches. Fall migration begins late July through September. They move rapidly toward the southern United States. And again, they're extremely social. So as they move, they gradually gather more and more together, right? So they get much larger flocks and much larger roosts, to where you get roosts of hundreds of thousands, which is not entirely pleasant for the Gulf Coast, right? They're at the end before they head on out. I mean, obviously birders would be pleased to see it, but to live under it, less desirable. Then they travel more leisurely through the tropics. They can reach Brazil by mid-October, but they can also arrive much later. And this, of course, is driven by the amount of food that they find and what the weather is and what the winds are, right, to help them migrate. They overwinter largely in the Amazon basin. This is not well studied and difficult to study, because you must differentiate between the many progeny species that come there for the same reason. Almost all purple martin molt occurs on the winter grounds. So the juvenile converts to the formative plumage if it's a first-year bird, and the formative subadult will convert to adult plumage if it's a second-year bird. Then as spring approaches, they move west out of the deepest part of the Amazon into places with less coverage. And it's not known why that is true. As you know, the climate in equatorial regions is relatively constant, but certainly one thing that does change is the amount of flooding and the amount of water. You're probably aware the Amazon becomes gigantic, tremendous flooding at certain times in the year. So this might be one of the influences on these choices. I mean, well, I can put it in simpler terms. Clearly, they're able to harvest more insects at their preferred height at this season when they move west, right? But I don't know what the underlying factors are. They next migrate to the Yucatan, typically, and most commonly arrive in the US in mid-February. Arrival time varies greatly. A few adult males often spotted in southern Iowa by mid-March. And so those what is seen first, and purple martins love to track this, and birders do too. So, and a subset of purple martins are birders using eBird, right? So there's a lot of data every year put out about this with considerable excitement in the purple martin community. So these first birds that come back are the adult males, right? And they have a nickname, they're called scouts, because before they could do research, people just assumed, oh, these birds, because they're the leaders of the pack, they come up and explore the best route, find the best locations, then they go back and get the others. So that was what was meant by scouts, but it's not true at all. It's just the oldest males hot to find the best territory, right? And so I didn't know that until I studied purple martins or began hanging out with Jim, but I did know as a birder, and it's very easy to observe that red-winged blackbirds, the sexes come back separately. The males come back way ahead. You know, you're seeing flocks of males. And then later you're seeing flocks of females coming through. So it's not uncommon with passerines. Okay. And now to get more toward the conclusion, we'll talk some about fostering purple martins. First, Jim, how many of your colonies are you personally attending now?
I just monitor 3 right now.
Yeah.
Been trying to farm one out.
Right. Well, no, that's fine. No, that's why I'm bringing it up. If anybody wanted to try this out, I've only done it 1 year, you know, I'm starting my 2nd year. It's been delightful. I'm very happy doing it. It's a joy. So I want to help you put that word out, Jim, and I'm glad you're here. Because it's quite time consuming. I mean, well, I should rephrase that. That's not quite true. It's somewhat time consuming at various times of the year. I should say it that way. Well, I'll come to it. Sorry. First thing to do, if you want to foster Purple Martins, is seek best practice information sources. The Honorable Jim Walters of Johnson County Songbird Project, the Purple Martin Conservation Association. And so this is their homepage here. And their slogan is, "You can make a difference in the survival of an entire species of songbird." Second, find a site. You can readily inherit a site nowadays at the present time, but you might want to establish your own site, and you might want to establish housing. So that's what my friend Debbie Bryant did last year. And that's what my friend Don Lund did how many years ago?
Several.
Yeah, many, many. So then you have to lure Purple Martins to your housing if new. And how quickly you get Purple Martins, probably the greatest factor is going to be how close by another colony is, but not necessarily. So there's tremendous variation in that. How many years did you wait after you established your housing, sir?
I actually got some back first year, but I didn't have success with the colony until I moved them from one side of the house to the other side of the house.
Okay, well, okay,
That's about 5 years.
okay. For Debbie, it was 2 weeks, so there's a luck factor, and again, if is there another Martin colony close by? Monitoring. Purple Martin Association suggests visiting every 4 or 5 days until egg laying begins, and then at least every 5 to 7 days afterward. Following Jim's leadership, we began evicting house sparrows 3 times a week until most nest chambers were occupied by martins, and afterwards continued with twice-a-week visits. So we're more robust in our tending of the colonies. So I wanted to try banning Purple Martin nestlings. And when I introduced myself to Jim and approached him about that, he recruited me to tend a colony. And I'm a wimp, so I immediately recruited partners. So first, a lady named Lula Sawi worked with me all last year on my colony. She's a full-time worker in the College of Public Health at the university, so it wasn't easy for her, right, to achieve that. And then shortly after, I recorded Sandy Eads, and then Mark came on, her husband came on shortly after, became tremendous partners. And then later still managed to recruit Chelsea and Nathan Kozat. And they have 2 young children whom they brought, and their youngest child really took to it. And so I coordinated that last year, and I managed to talk Chelsea into coordinating our team this year. And even though we're tending 3 times a week, we worked it out so each of us only have to go 2 of those days, right? We've broken into teams that way. Now, many, perhaps most Martin landlords trap and kill house sparrows, and we only evicted them 3 times a week. And once you kicked them out, and the martins, you get really high numbers of martins there, the martins will beat them up once they outnumber them and become predominant. Some colonies have problems with vertebrate predators, including raptors and mammals and snakes. There are 2 types of predator guards. That's not going to help you with raptors, but there's a wraparound predator guard that most people use on their towers. And we're on a farm and we have none, but there's a lovely farm dog there. And I don't know my dog breeds, but I do know that is a breed that's very protective of farm animals. So it seems to keep those ground-based creatures away from our colony. And our earliest threat absolutely is house sparrows. They compete for nest cavities. And who would win in a 1-to-1 battle between a house sparrow and a purple martin, or in a pair-to-pair fight for a cavity? Well, I don't know the answer to that. The house sparrow is only 32 grams, the purple martin's 52 grams, but the sparrows have strong bills and robust feet and legs, and being smaller might help you fight inside a cavity, right? So I don't know who would win that battle. I do know that David Attenborough, who like Jim is a fan of house sparrows, and house sparrows are native in England. So David Attenborough once referred to them as street brawlers. So they are fierce little birds. That this I do know. Now, most colonies, and this is our other major problem, most are troubled by mites. And this is a highly magnified version actually of a poultry mite, or actually called a chicken mite, but identical, same genus. In this case, Dermonisus prognephelus is the one that attacks purple martins. And of course, prognephelus means loves martins, but not the kind of love that you're looking for. If you happen to be out looking for love right now, this is not the kind that you want. So then this is an artistic rendition of the mite piercing through the epidermis to find a capillary bed, right, to suck blood. And they are very troubling to the young. Now they're, let's see if I got it here. They're, if you drop down to the second part, where it says mite infestations, they're easy to spot and kill in the afternoon. So when the nest chamber heats up in the afternoon, they move to the outside of it. And so you just come in there, you know, twice a week, and you hit that with isopropyl alcohol, and that pretty much holds them back. Sometimes it doesn't quite get the job done. So if we see really high numbers, I started the habit of holding a gourd back, so that I can immediately move those chicks away from that bad gourd into a good gourd, right? There's another way to do it is move them into a bucket, clean the gourd, and put them in the clean gourd. But we've started a new way this year. Well, actually, I started last year, and we're carrying it on this year. Yeah, so that's fightable. Yeah, we beat that. So, as I said earlier, biting gnats are hurtful to featherless nestings, and we've been smearing Absorbing Junior on gourd entrances, and the active ingredient there is menthol, and it's unnecessary after day 12 post-hatching. And we've never observed we haven't observed gnats, and we haven't observed lesions, so we trust that method of putting a little on the entrance. It's satisfactory. And then it's sad for us last year, but we worked it out and rescued them. We came in once when there'd been a storm, right? We came in a couple days after a storm, and we just hadn't given any thought. And you know, there's this totally soaking nestlings in there. I'm just amazed they survived. But again, they did survive. We were able to trade them out and get dry materials in there. And it happens that Chelsea and Nathan, they're going to get to the place whenever there's a rainstorm this year. They live in North Liberty, right? The others of us are coming from some distance. So we won't let that happen again. Now, the preponderance of this information was from 4 major sources. The foremost source by far was a chapter in Cornell Lab's Birds of the World. And last time I presented to you all, I was grousing to you that if you want to track your kestrels by way of the Cornell Lab, they charge you to do that. They charge you to participate where it had been free prior when it was under a different umbrella. But I shouldn't have groused like that, because Cornell gives away so much, right? They gave us Merlin. Yes, that's phenomenal all by itself. And this is, to use Birds of the World, you have to subscribe. You can just get minimal intro information otherwise. But I subscribe, and I don't use it frequently, but it's just a way to give to the awesome Cornell Lab, right, as well for me. And this, it was wonderful to study it for kestrels, and it's wonderful to study it for purple martins. So that was my primary source. Purple Martin Conservation Association has a very broad website that I use information from. I took most of my photos come from the Commons of Wikipedia. They keep a free media collection, Creative Commons. Marvelous, beautiful photos. And of course, again, the esteemed Jim Walters. So here's a photo by Tamara Elliott, some of you might know. And likely you don't know Ben Wolfpack Westfall, but a photo from each. And both of these people, Jim, want me to give you their regards. So, and where is Ben? Is he down in that Missouri city that's so famous? Ben Wolfpack Westfall. Can't think who he is. Yeah, no, well, since I forgot your name, we're even. he thinks much of you, Jim. He remembers you. He took your picture, Jim. Unrequited love it's a hard thing. Okay, so the other references, if anybody wants them, you probably saw I made some various statements in there that sound pretty remarkable, but they're coming from scientific documents. I want to go on here until I find that. So there's a professor at Tulsa University. He's a behavioral ecologist interested in the evolution of social behavior. And he's right now using cliff swallows as a model for colonial behavior. But this man, Charles R. Brown, when he was 12 years old, his dad had a purple martin house and he was fascinated by it. So that's a description of his work. That's not meaningful, but I could provide you with that if you're interested. But this is an article for when he was in high school at a very famous bird journal, the Auk. So this guy is hardcore birder, nerdy brain scientist, and a tremendous amount of the information I provided is directly from his research. I mean, his first focus was the purple martins, right? He studied them 4 years. Okay, so let's put that, let me hold off on that. Okay. Okay, let's try some thought questions for you from the information. Not that you would know it. I mean, I'm catching you off guard and everything, but these are fun things to think about. So, and you might teach me. That's always possible. So I'm looking for, oh yeah, I know what I'm looking for. Okay. So I told you that these 4 species, okay, and this species, and these species are the Sinaloa martin, the purple martin, the Caribbean martin, and the southern martin. I told you they winter in Amazonia, right? These 4 and this one winter. Their non-breeding area is Amazonia. Are they there together? Right, exactly. So this bird is not there at the same time, right? Right. The secret is the climate's constant here, so it'll do for wintering grounds any time of the year, right? But this bird wants to be in Argentina in the austral summer, right? And the others want to be in the northern hemisphere in the whatever the word is for northern summer. Boreal, in the boreal summer. Yeah. Okay. Now, how about this? Okay. Coming back to this figure. Look at the timeline. Over here is the timeline, right? The code for the timeline. Look how Iowa is yellowish, right? See all this red up here? But Iowa is more tinged yellowish, right? And that's post-breeding migratory season. So what does that tell you about looking for purple martins in Iowa in the wild? I mean, to me, it says the best time to see them is in the fall. And I thought there might be enough birders here that they might confirm that was their experience. But you're most like aside from going to a purple martin colony, the most likely purple martins you're going to see in Iowa are the ones from these northern places coming through Iowa, right? And it's not because there's more in these northern places, it's because there's a lot of the northern places, right? It's a large area from which they're going to channel, then likely channel through Iowa. This is not according to me. It's not according to Cornell in a sense. It's according to you. It's eBird data is what we're talking about here. And eBird is so powerful, it almost makes banding obsolete. Okay, have another one here for you.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, yeah, but I'm not thoughtful, so.
So the plains, the grassy plains, why aren't the martins there? What's the delineating?
Okay. I'm sorry, are you asking about this?
the whole area, as you go from north to south, I think there's a pretty
My area.
a wide area of white, yeah, so. Which is grassland, so what I.
Okay, I'm gonna go back to eBird. So we want to look at the eBird data, right? That's what
Can
you
you
mean?
repeat the question for Zoomers?
Yes, thank you.
The, right through the plain, the grassland. I mean, I think there would be insects there too, but maybe the insects don't fly as high or maybe, I don't know. I think
There just be a tree cover? I mean, look at tree cover, that's a map of tree cover.
I,
was used to having one tree.
well, those are good thoughts. I'm gonna repeat the question for the people on Zoom. So the question was, why are the purple martins lacking in the prairies? Is that a fair truth? Yeah, and it's a good question, and I don't know. And a suggested answer from the audience was
Could be just tree cover agriculture.
that they preferred tree cover. There might be some benefit to tree cover, but
nesting spots for the. What do they use? They use.
okay,
You know,
no, okay, I'm gonna follow that. So Noah has said, if there's no human colonies provided, what would they do? Oh, they're not gonna do anything. They're gonna be at a total loss. So that's a very thoughtful answer because population densities are lower there. So I already mentioned that down here in the south part of Dixie, right? They're loaded with purple martins, but they're also, if you look at the southeast side of Florida, that's just loaded with people. So therefore, there can be a lot of colonies where there's people. So that's a very good thought, Noah. Yeah. Excellent. It's a great question, Dave. And
Mark, I think it's an arid region there. There's a big population of eastern purple martins through mid-Texas. And then it becomes arid. You don't see anything. See that sign there? And then you go farther west and you get into the mountains of New Mexico, western New Mexico, eastern Arizona. And you see martins again.
Which would be a lack of food during part of the year.
Probably lack of food and nesting there too. I don't.
yeah, so, okay. So I'm going to repeat that for Zoomers. So Don is suggesting that the area missing the purple martins is not only lacking trees, it's quite arid. And once he said that, it occurs to me that there's not a small part of it is what's called the high plains. And the high plains is cold at times, right? So that purple martins don't like that at all. So that's yet another factor, potential factor. Yeah. Okay. So I didn't tell you, but it happens that our subspecies, Prochnus subus, is darker, especially the females are darker than both the western species Arboricola and the desert species, if you will, Hesperia. Why might that be? Does anyone have any idea why darker birds in the east?
what they eat.
That could be a factor. That's a very good thought, right? Because a lot of birds make their color comes from substances in their diets. That's not a bad answer at all.
Solar heat retention.
That's a good thought as well. That's a reasonable thought as well. In other words, more intense solar radiation, you might want to be a lighter color, right? To trap less of it. Yeah, there actually is another reason that's very famous. So there is a German ecologist named Gloger that created Gloger's rule, and it is a general truth that birds living in wetter environments have much darker feathers. And the theory is that they're more subject to degradation by bacteria, and that the melanin helps resist that bacterial degradation. That second part is theory. The first part, birds in wetter areas have darker feathers, is fact, right? And then so Gloger's rule is true, but it's just theory as far as the bacteria. Okay, why might parents, I told you that parents eat fecal sacs for the first 8 days. And after that, they start discarding them. Now, I told you my family, we had no experience with this sort of thing, but if you can speak from family experience, that'd be tremendous help. Does anybody have any idea? Because an idea immediately comes to me why that might be. Why they eat them for the first 8 days and later carry them away.
Unless I'll write the difference between. Probably because they're smaller, when they get.
No, that's a good thought. There's less. They could be have different content, more mucoidy. I have still another idea about it. Well, why would that make a difference?
You're wasting, you know,
That's what I think. No, that's what I think. That's what I think. So Noah suggests they're not fully digested. That's what I think it most likely is. So I think the parents can get they're not going to waste that nourishment. You know what I'm saying? That the super young have very inefficient digestive tract. And so there's still nourishment to be had. That's my suspicion. But again, we didn't do this in my family, so I can't speak from personal experience. Why feed a nestling till it's heavier than the parent? And I don't know the answer, but I do know something to compare it to. Why feed a nestling until it's heavier than the parent?
It's gonna take them a while to develop their hunting skills.
That does give them a bonus when they leave, but interestingly at the time they leave, they've lost most of that weight. Interestingly, yeah. So it's a bit of a riddle. That's a very good theory. Otherwise, so I only know to compare it to the barred owls. So the barred owls feed their young until they're heavier than the parent. But the barred owls get tired of feeding their young. And so they just flat out quit. And I know this because in the particular time in the summer, you hear these ungodly noises. And this was true in Newton, Iowa, in town. Summertime, have my windows open very late at night, and you hear these horrific noises. And it's the baby barred owls screaming at their parents, bring me food, bring me food. And the parents say, your turn, you go find the food. So I think that could be part of it. You know what I'm saying? It could be that they feed them up, charge them all up, and then they say, now when they get hungry enough, they're going to fledge and we're going to be free, right? I don't know. That's speculation based on barred owls.